High Level is a full CRM and marketing platform, and I've used some of the best in the SaaS industry. And we are live from LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, not X anymore, Instagram. It's Revening's Wednesday. Welcome to WinsDay, Revenue Party people. We've got hot topics and hot guests, so let's get into it. But before we do, I want to remind you, we have a newsletter that goes out every Wednesday, and it recaps the show. So if you missed this and you want to get it in written word, it's going out. So you just want to head on over to reveting.com/newsletter and you're going to be able to check it out. This shows reveting.com, but it's literally just /newsletter and then you can subscribe. Also, we let you know about upcoming episodes along with what's going on in the Women Wave community, which is a free community. Let me know if you want to join. We've got women in business, sales, and marketing. And we're talking about our 2025 retreat. So would love to have you there if that's something you're interested in. But big shout out to High Level. High Level is my everything tool. That's what I always call it. I use it for marketing automation as well as my CRM, and it doesn't break the bank. So when I was a full-time CMO working at some of the other SaaS companies, we would pay major money for some of these larger platforms, and we don't have to do that anymore. High Level has everything you need. So I'll be telling you more about that. But you can scan this, or you can just go to reveting.com/high level if you're listening to this later on podcast. But we've got a QR code on screen for those watching it live, but would love to have you try it out. And if you do, reach out to me because I'll get you into my coaching program for a couple sessions free of charge just to help you get set up. Because if you're signing up with my affiliate code, it's to my advantage to make sure that you succeed. So use High Level. Also, Cherry Assistant. I'm scaling right now, getting more and more clients who also want to go live and repurpose their content across channels. Believe it or not, podcast, newsletter is picking up a lot of steam in the marketing world. And we wrote about that in the newsletter as well. In B2B, some of the more traditional marketing tactics are coming back. So check out the latest edition of the newsletter to see some of those stats. But there was also an article in b2bmarketing.net that lists a lot of it as well. And that's who we were citing. So you can check it out there too. But I couldn't do what we're doing with scaling without Cherry Assistant. They are a VA placement service, but I work directly with Cherry Assistant and then they help me find people with the skills that I'm looking for to help me, progress all the clients that I'm working with. So video editing, and for me, there's social media management that they're helping me with. There's newsletter management. So I'm not only writing my own newsletter, we're writing newsletters for other people, and we need humans to make sure that they're also reading it over. So Cherry Assistant has been a serious help to me. And so scan that code and you can try it out. Also, Layla, she's here in the background. If you wouldn't mind dropping the affiliate links for both of those in the chat for anyone who just wants to click it, then that would be awesome. But let's get right into our amazing episode because we have two hot guests that I can't wait to bring on. And I don't know if I didn't tell them pre-show. So if they haven't watched the show before, they don't know about our intro. So the way we do our intro here is I'm going to put up our handy 2-minute clock, hand it off to both of them, and ask them to tell us our full life story that not our full life story, but their full life story that we can't find on LinkedIn. So we want to know the stuff in between the resume. Where were you born to what brought you to now? But we'll get into that. Welcome to the show. We've got attorney Blake here with us, along with John Rich. Thank you so much for joining both of us. And I'm just going to jump right into it. Blake, can we start with you? Could you tell us your full life story in 2 minutes?
Sounds good. And that was quite an introduction. Thank you very much. So, this life story that's not on LinkedIn, I think it goes back to when I was about 6 years old and I was in kindergarten. Each day, our parents would give us $1, and then that dollar is supposed to be used to buy our lunch. I realized if you don't have the dollar, they're still going to feed us kindergartners. And then, after about 3 weeks of me forgetting my dollar, the school contacted my parents and said, "You need to send Blake $1." My parents had been sending Blake $1. The school then did what I considered an improper search, went into my cubby and found about $20 that I'd managed to save up. This taught me a very important lesson. It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. And that's what inspired me to become an asset protection attorney. I graduated from the University of Florida Law School. I then went and started my own estate practice after working for another trust law firm in the Denver area. My office was located a few blocks away from another attorney's office named Barry Engel. Barry Engel was the godfather of asset protection. He's the one who wrote the initial Cook Islands trust law that is the basis of everything my firm does back in the 1980s. I learned a lot from Barry over the years before he passed away. I then went on to travel the world. I've been to dozens of different countries. I've met with trust companies, bankers, protectors, CPAs from all over the world. And through my travels and through my work with my clients, I have built what I consider to be the world's best asset protection law firm. We focus exclusively on offshore asset protection planning. We have been told by the leading Cook Islands trust company, Southpac, that our law firm registers more trust than any other law firm in the world. We have for the past couple of years with them. Last year, we set the record for the most number of trusts ever registered by one law firm in a single year. So it started out early. I'm an asset protection attorney. I help my clients keep their property safe from lawsuits and divorce.
Incredible.
Pretty
Well,
good.
that's a very important topic that more people need to be thinking about. So I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. And you still had some time left.
I had about 30 seconds left. I'll see that over to John.
No, well, we want to know more about you.
Oh! I've got another 2 minutes left. I'm sorry. I thought I only had 2 minutes to go through the whole introduction.
You have about 40 seconds left. I cut you off.
Okay, 40 seconds. I can make good use of 40 seconds. So what my firm does, now you know that how I got here, is we set up offshore structures, which are typically registered in the Cook Islands, though we do work in Nevis and Belize as well. And then under those structures, we help our clients move their assets into the trust. This will typically involve opening an offshore bank account, most likely in Switzerland or Liechtenstein, which is then controlled by the Cook Islands Trust Company. Clients can still invest their money. Clients can buy stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency, gold, silver. They can place real estate into the trust as well, though it does not get the same level of protection as an asset that's actually held overseas. The clients then, if they are ever sued, have the ability to tell the creditor they don't have the assets directly in their name. They don't have the power to hand them over to an opposing party. This gives our clients a lot of settlement leverage, the ability to get a better settlement in the event that they get sued. And look forward to discussing this more, but I think I've hit my first at this point.
So that's what we'll be getting into a little bit, is offshore. I don't know, what is it called? What is our topic here? It's called
offshore asset protection.
Oh, asset protection. Okay, thank you. But also, we're going to be talking about protecting our assets, but also growing them. So could you introduce yourself, please, John, and tell us your 2 minutes from birth to what brought you to now?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here. My name is John Rich. I am a B2B brand and PR expert that's helping kind of small startups and young financial firms kind of grow their digital presence and their brand. Where this all starts is in upstate New York, Rochester, New York, where we average a lot of snow. And as someone that has now moved down to Virginia in the southern part, oddly enough, I miss it. I went to school in Central Virginia, found my way working in DC on Capitol Hill, and bouncing around to a lot of different strategic PR firms. And so in that lane, I learned a lot about myself, a lot about working with other folks, and a lot about strategic messaging and the importance of strategic messaging. And so after kind of being a little disillusioned and frustrated with all the work there, went out to work for a tech company in San Francisco, which was a great experience doing content, brand, and marketing in that front. That didn't last just because of the mortgage rates and everything. So came back to work in DC and started working with financial firms and doing branding and PR. And so the catalyst for my story really is a couple of different things. I thought, a lot of these firms don't necessarily have the resources to hire a boutique agency. Those retainers tend to be much higher than the resources they have, nor certainly don't have time for a full-time staff. And so what I'm trying to do is fill a void of helping these brands grow, but also being very transparent in what I can deliver. And I think growing a digital brand on LinkedIn and using some of these resources, and then layering on top PR, podcast pitching, messaging, brand consistency across their growth. We're seeing a ton of results in that. And it's really exciting to not only challenge myself, but to kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit, something I didn't have, for a very long time.
Yeah. So interesting. And you still have 20 seconds. So I'd love to hear more about your experience on Capitol Hill. How long were you there?
So I was there for about 5 years. In the last decade, before kind of working for the financial fields, had just kind of, again, more advocacy policy. It's really interesting. I think one thing I will say is it seems very divided, right, our country. But I think you'll come to realize a lot of people there, they work well together. I think for the cameras, a lot of people, you'll see that. But I think internally, people will be surprised that they work very well together. And it's not as, they don't attack each other as much as they do on TV.
So interesting. That's actually where I started my career too. I didn't spend as much time there, but in 2006, I was an intern for Senator Durbin in the Capitol building. I was a press intern.
Nice.
And yes, it was a good experience. And same thing. I noticed the same thing while I was out there. It wasn't as like cutthroat as we see on the news, very, dramatized, but definitely made the transition to marketing, but still even today use lessons I learned from going through books on Capitol Hill. I digress. Let's get into these hot topics. And the first one is offshore strategies, which I'll be honest, I know nothing about. So fill us in from people who are, say, like a CEO or a director of marketing who are just now being introduced to this, maybe didn't have access to it before, didn't come from families who did this. How could you tell us from the very beginning of how to protect our assets?
Okay, so let's start by talking about who needs to protect their assets. And the most common misconception is that asset protection is only for the super wealthy. The reality is most lawsuits that are being filed against individuals with $2 million or less in assets. If we have two individuals, let's say first individual is worth $2 million and the second individual is worth $200 million, and both get sued for $5 million, the individual who has $200 million does not need to necessarily worry about negotiation. They can fight that case. And if they end up losing, it's not going to have any real effect on their standard of living. Now, if the individual with $2 million gets hit with the $5 million judgment, that could be devastating. And those are the individuals who really need to be able to negotiate. And having an asset protection trust is going to be the best tool available for protecting your assets and giving you power to negotiate in the event you're sued. The majority of clients that we work with have somewhere between about $1 and $10 million in assets. We do have some with a little bit under $1 million, some with $10 million plus. In terms of asset protection strategies, there's two main strategies that are used. There are domestic asset protection trusts and there are offshore trusts. Now, the offshore trusts have been around since the 1980s. The Cook Islands was the first jurisdiction to have a good real codified asset protection trust law. Since then, about 24 other jurisdictions, 24 or more other jurisdictions have followed suit. 1998 rolls around, or late 90s, and Alaska was the first United States state jurisdiction, the first jurisdiction in the United States to allow for the use of a domestic asset protection trust. The domestic asset protection trust initially grew in popularity because clients were more comfortable with a U.S.-based trustee. They were more comfortable with jurisdictions they had used that they were familiar with, as opposed to Cook Islands, which they probably didn't even know where on the map the Cook Islands is located. It's located in the South Pacific, not the Caribbean. Well, after years of having domestic trusts in place and offshore trusts in place, there's been a very clear winner in the battle of who's going to do a better job in protecting your assets. And I'll give you a hint. It's not the trust which can be broken by a U.S. court. It's the trust which is governed by an entirely different set of laws and rules, which are designed to be much more protective than U.S.-based laws. The case law with domestic trust is questionable at best, and its reality, in my opinion, is actually quite scary and dangerous. It's the reason that my firm will no longer set up a domestic asset protection trust. It's just much weaker protection, much weaker settlement leverage that you are getting if you set up a domestic trust. This is the reason that my firm focuses on setting up offshore asset protection trust. In terms of which jurisdiction to use, there are, as I mentioned, dozens of options, but there's only really 3 countries with good codified asset protection laws, which gladly welcome Americans: Cook Islands, Nevis, and Belize. And third place is Belize. Belize, while I like the law, it's not the most stable place to do business. The regulators there can be a little bit unpredictable. If we can get our clients into a Nevis or Cook Islands trust, that would be our preference. Nevis also has a very good law in place. It's essentially the same as the Cook Islands. I was just meeting with the Prime Minister of Nevis when I was there a few weeks ago. They're very committed to the asset protection business. However, the Cook Islands still holds the gold standard for asset protection. They've been in the business the longest. Their increased distance from the United States deters litigation, and they have excellent trust companies there to work with, which is a very important thing to consider when setting up an offshore trust. So we'll register the trust offshore, and they'll help the client to open a bank account, typically in Switzerland. Most Swiss banks, their minimum account size is about $1 million. We do have relationships with a few firms where for our clients, we can get accounts open for as little as around $500,000. I'm not sure how much time I'm supposed to take here, so I'm going to take a break and you let me know if I keep going.
No, thanks for taking a break. But yeah, no, I think this is good and it's right on point. So could you keep going, like even under 500,000, just like where you were going?
Okay, so if a client has under 500,000, there's other banking options we can explore. This includes a bank in the Cook Islands, which can open an account for as little as $250, or a bank out of Panama, which can open an account for as little as $100,000. But most people who are looking to do asset protection planning are generally able to meet the $500,000 million minimum in order to open a Swiss bank account. Can a U.S. person open a Swiss bank account? The answer is absolutely. Back in 2008, when Obama took office, the IRS did crack down on Swiss banks, which were helping Americans to hide money from the IRS. The days of hiding money are long gone in Switzerland or anywhere in the world, as far as I know or am concerned. But the Swiss banks are still excellent tools for asset protection from lawsuits, and they're very stable and safe banks as well. An American bank may keep 5 to 10% of its cash on hand. A Swiss bank is more likely to keep 25 to 40% of its cash on hand. The banks we work with don't take outside investor money, which means management is not pressured to make risky bets to benefit investors in the short term. They just have a much more long-term mentality than you'll find with banks in America. So we utilize the safest jurisdiction for registering a trust, and we use the best jurisdiction for opening a bank account. We've zoomed out, so I assume this means I should take a break now.
No, that's interesting. I'm kind of curious. Do you see an influx in business around like presidential elections?
I see an influx in lead volume. I get a lot of people who call me and say, if so-and-so takes office or if so-and-so is reelected, then we're moving out of here. We think the country's going to crash and the economy's going with it. The reality, though, is that people who actually end up hiring my firm are concerned about lawsuits. It's not so much the people who are fearing a change in government that become our clients. They call our office. I tell them this is an option that you can do to offshore your strategy. That tends to be a little bit more talk. Really, it's people who are engaged in business activities, or there's a car accident, or they're concerned about a divorce, or they have employees. These are the people who are actually motivated enough to move forward and complete the process. So a change in the presidential cycle, it does affect the amount of leads that we're seeing come in, but the actual number of lawsuits in the United States seems to grow consistently year over year, which has then caused the main change in our business year over year. The fluctuation of the presidential election really is not such an issue. I get asked, is the offshore industry going to be affected by the presidential election? The reality is the presidential election, the president, the media, the public at large is not concerned about offshore trust. They're concerned about war, now tariffs or abortion, the concept of offshore trust is not a hot topic. It's something used by many of the people in political office. It's something used by many of the people who donate and support the politicians. It's a very well protected industry. And it's good that it's growing in popularity. The industry is growing, and there's more people who are now opening up their mind to global solutions to the problems. And the people who are going to enjoy the wealth the most, who are going to accumulate the wealth the most, are the ones with a global mindset and are the ones willing to look beyond the borders of the United States for solutions to their issues.
So interesting. Wow. Well, thank you for getting into that. I have not talked about offshore strategies or anything of that nature, but I think it is important. So thank you for sharing that, all of that information. I'm curious, John, is this something that you thought about?
No, I mean it's definitely interesting. I've obviously in trying to protect your wealth, looking more into trust. I mean, I would love to know has this been taken off in the last 5-10 years in the sense of I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a wealthy person, and it typically seems like this is more of a tactic for wealthy people. But I feel like people that are maybe upper middle class have been looking into this or been, I guess, waking up to this more recently. Is that the case, or is that just me being naive?
Well, as I mentioned, the industry has been growing quite a bit since I entered it about 10 years ago. So I think the biggest change, though, is Americans are traveling more as there's more work from home options, as travel, relatively speaking, gotten cheaper, as though we've seen maybe a decline in the overall middle class, there's been maybe an increased number of people wealthy enough to travel. And as the internet and TikTok has let us connect with people from all around the world, people are opening their eyes and realizing, oh, wow, there's places that are safe outside the United States. Oh, wow, it's not that expensive to go somewhere new. And as people have started to travel more, they've gotten more comfortable with the idea of having their money in a foreign bank account, working with a trust company that's not located 2 states over, but located on the other side of the world. I think the biggest change is actually people's mentality, which has been a major driving force in the industry. On top of that, lawsuits continue to spiral out of control in the United States. Trump has mentioned something about trying to bring in some tort reform by having a more of a loser pays system, which would be a good thing for reducing the amount of litigation. I don't see that getting passed. The American Trial Lawyers Association has a very strong grasp on Washington, D.C. I think the more realistic thing for each of us to do is protect our own assets and prepare for whatever comes our way.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So we need to protect our assets, yes, but we also need to grow our assets. I think we'd all agree on that. And I just wrote about this in the newsletter this morning. There was an article, it's in b2b.net. And they were talking about the shift in thought leadership. It used to be we needed to kind of pay to play, get into, some of these different publications, even like traditional PR. Hate to say it, John, but I do think that traditional PR is still really important, and we'll get into that. That's our topic 4. But just in general, it was talking about the importance of trust building and thought leadership on social media and consistent content creation. So could you kick us off on content strategy and the quality versus quantity debate? Because a lot of us are out here just like, oh, I need to get 3 posts a day, or, oh, I need to do this. But then some of us are like, I don't care if, 5 people show up, especially if they're the right 5 people and I'm only posting once a day. But there is a balance. You got to do a little bit of the quantity to get a little bit of the quantity, but how do you balance it?
Yeah, no, I think we should probably bring it back here. And I love that you brought up PR. When working in a traditional PR space, I have found that a lot of clients and a lot of people are, hey, I want to grow my brand. I don't want to pay, X amount of dollars for a lead or in these paid campaigns. So what they'll ask for is placements in the Wall Street Journal or placements in tier 2 publications, industry publications. Hey, get me in here, get me in here. And in reality, it's not easy, right? Everyone thinks that they are a story. Everyone thinks that their story is special. Everyone thinks that we can just email a reporter and the reporter's like, hey, let's go for it. And that's just simply not the case. And so during my time, I felt that it was hard to deliver some of those wins for them. And so I was like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And so as this was happening, the rise of course, of social media in the last decade, but more importantly, I think the rise of LinkedIn has been huge in the last 5 years. And so what I was able to do was say, hey, listen, I can't promise you a story. No one can. I can maybe promise you a discussion with a reporter, right? I think PR people can make that promise depending on what kind of relationship you have, but we can't promise stories. And so, but what I can promise you is growth of your digital community, right? And that's kind of where content strategy came in. And I'm glad you brought up thought leadership and kind of how that's dying. I think that's a played out corporate term. I'm not a huge fan of that. I understand it. But I think instead of thinking like a thought leader, because everyone's a thought leader, everyone has thoughts, and you could have 2,000 followers but not have great thoughts, but you would still be considered a thought leader in that sense. Folks need to start thinking of themselves as content creators, right? It's simply not. Back in the day, you could draft a very long blog that was very rich in substance, had a lot of good arguments, a lot of good thoughts, and that could really drive a lot of traffic, drive a lot of leads, really enshrine yourself as someone that's a leader in that industry. And now that's really no longer the case. Certainly that's a huge part of it. But, a lot of thought leaders need to think of themselves as creators and how can I leverage the algorithm on these platforms? And that's really kind of the deliverables, right? So it's talking about, video, how to write good posts with quality hooks and copywriting, of course, using blogs, graphics, diversifying your assets on LinkedIn. And that's really going to show the algorithm that you're tuned into what it wants and what other folks on the platform want. And that's going to help the digital brand grow. So that brings us to the quantity versus quality debate. Thankfully, the show is a little long and I have a couple minutes to answer this question. I think, as everyone knows, they're both very important. And so I'm going to kind of go over each of one very quickly. Quality is important, and how we dictate or measure quality is different to each person. And so what's important when you're on LinkedIn, whether you're an agency, whether you're a company, whether you're a full-time employee, what do you want out of LinkedIn, right? So for instance, full-time employees, they may not want anything out of LinkedIn, and that's totally fine. I would argue you should still have somewhat of an understanding or strategy of what you're trying to do. But if you're speaking from an agency or from a startup or even like a small middle market firm, generally speaking, you're probably going to want leads or investors or some sort of attention to bring, leads into your brand. And so are you going for primarily impressions? Are you going for engagement, or are you going for leads? What are you going for? And so the quality really depends on, again, what you want. And of course, once you figure out that strategy, if it's impressions, right? I wrote a post here the other week I'm going to refer to. If you want impressions, talk about personal or emotional evoking stories or posts. If you want engagement, ask questions, make bold claims, provoke people in your network to engage. And then if you want leads or investors, right? Every time you start a post, think about, I'm texting that person. What does that person want to hear? That person's very busy. Let's get right to it. Let's provide value. And so that's really the quality and understanding what you want out of it. Now, the quantity, I think, is a little easier to settle. I think a lot of people have largely agreed on what the quantity aspect is. On LinkedIn, you really want one post a week. One post a day. That's kind of where you want it. It's the algorithm works in a way that if it knows you're posting and you're active, it's going to reward that activity. And so the more you post, the more the algorithm will be forced to serve more people, right? Whereas if you're not posting, maybe one post here or there will go viral, but for the most part, LinkedIn is going to kind of forget about you. And so at least one post, at a minimum 3 posts a week on LinkedIn. X is, and Twitter is a little different. I think that's you can post often. It really varies on the content and what you're doing. But I like to use Twitter/X as a way to kind of crowdsource ideas, understand what contents they're engaging with, and then maybe move that over to other platforms. Instagram and Facebook, a little different, not B2B. That's not my specialty, but I would imagine you, Jesse, or others would have better ideas on how much to post there. But really for LinkedIn as a B2B marketer and finding niche audiences, it's really once a day.
Mm. No, I'm not. I'm more of a LinkedIn person myself as well, too. I help businesses go live on LinkedIn. And it is helpful when we are, because going live is also kind of all about whatever, building thought leadership or whatever you want to call it. But we're creating repurposable content that they can then share on their pages to help keep them consistent. But yeah, I think finding a consistent time and consistent days to work it into your routine, so your audience kind of comes to expect when to see you. And also, like, you can't just be a megaphone, right? You gotta, the other half of it is engaging. It's supposed to be a social site.
Yeah.
So if you're watching, we want to hear from you. By the way, keep us honest here. How are you all growing your business?
Yeah.
And what's your take on quantity versus quality? I will say, there's such thing as oversaturation. So if you want to, post 3 times a day, it's probably going to hurt you, both physically and on the algorithm. But I digress. I know on TikTok, people will say 3 times a day for sure as you're building. And I did that myself, but I digress. How about you, Blake? Have you started building your personal brand anywhere else besides LinkedIn?
I post 3 times a day.
You do?
There you go.
And my philosophy is you can post as much as you want as long as it's good quality.
Yep.
And so TikTok is the platform that I'm biggest on, with a little bit over 250,000 followers. But we post on lots of different channels. I spend quite a bit of time getting our message out, not just on social media, but yes, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X as well, TikTok. I also do speaking events. I teach continuing education. I've written a book on the subject as well. Anyone who calls our office and is a qualified prospect, we mail them a copy of the book. If someone's just more interested in our services but not necessarily qualified candidate, we can source them a PDF of our book, let them get educated, and then when the time's right, we can find a time to work together. So I do spend a lot of time doing outreach and education, and because of it, I found that leads come to us a lot more ready to buy. As I've increased the amount of information out there about offshore trust, we've definitely found people are educating themselves more. Now, there's a lot of information on the internet, and sometimes it gets confusing and some of it contradicts. So I do say, start your research, do some research on your own, watch a few videos, read a few articles, but don't try to get everything figured out on your own. You're not going to find a better source of information on asset protection than talking directly to an asset protection attorney such as myself or someone at my firm.
Yeah. And I will say, with organic, it's, a lot of corporations, especially smaller firms, don't have, again, the resources to do a lot of this stuff. So building a digital brand, to your point, and putting out content that lets people come to you. I've noticed I've kind of shifted my strategy in the sense of, instead of relying on finding people, is creating quality content that resonates with my ideal customer and then letting them come to me. Or when I reach out to them, through other means, they simply go to my profile as a credibility check, and they see, oh, this guy seems legit. He's got some good points. Let me talk to him, and there it is. So I think that's the right play.
Such a good point. And I'm glad that you backed me up on the TikTok 3 posts a day thing, because there must be something over there if you've got 250,000 followers and you're doing 3 posts a day too. Because it is a different algorithm. I like TikTok. I need to go find you. What's your handle on TikTok, Blake?
Blake Harris Law on every platform. Blake Harris Law.
Blake Harris Law. Everyone needs to go find at Blake Harris Law on TikTok. I'm putting it in the chat right now. But yeah, it's a great search engine, TikTok. So, if you want to learn more before you reach out to someone like Blake, if not Blake himself, you can go scroll his TikTok. I love TikTok for that reason. But I digress. For just a quick moment, I want to tell you all a little bit about High Level. So High Level, I've been coaching on it in the Taking Up Space program. So the Taking Up Space program is my group coaching program. We may meet 3 days a week in Zoom, and it's only for an hour long. But while we're there, we open with an intro. We get into our coursework. So lately, our coursework has been building a masterclass. So you all may recall I had a free masterclass last week. And part of that was to show the students of the Taking Up Space program how to build their own masterclass in High Level. So that's something you can do too. So if you subscribe to that masterclass, then you know. If not, then here's what happened. You went to the masterclass landing page, you registered, gave me your email and your phone number, and then there were a current of emails that would come being like masterclass is 3 days away, 2 days away, because you can set up your automation based on the event date, which I love about the workflows and high level because I'm constantly helping businesses as well as myself create events. So we've got 2 students who are well on their way to creating a masterclass. They're using high level and it's not that hard. These are solopreneurs and you can do it too. So just use let me put up the code here again. If you're on video, you can scan that with your phone. Otherwise, if you're on podcast, just go to reveting.com/high level, get a free trial with high level, then reach out to me. Let me know you heard this on WinsDay, and I will give you access to a couple free sessions of the Taking Up Space program to help get you started on high level while you're in that 30-day trial. Because I want to make sure that it works for you. It'll be to my advantage, especially and only if you sign up with my affiliate link. But then also, really quick, I told you a little bit about Cherry Assistant, but I want to show you a menu of services that they offer because people are constantly asking, well, what else do they do besides, content creation and a lot of the stuff that I'm doing? They do a whole lot for other people. So take a look.
This is Mike, also known as Clean with Mike on Twitter. Mike hired a virtual assistant from Cherry Assistant about 2 years ago. Now he has a $50K per month business fully managed by a remote operator in South Africa. His VA from South Africa does the following: closing inbound leads on the phone, Yelp and Google and Facebook, manages his CRM and Go High Level, deals with rescheduling, cancellations, any issues, hires and manages the cleaners, and sends them daily reports and updates. Mike has a fully cash flowing business managed by a remote operator for only $8 an hour. You can also hire a US equivalent worker in the Philippines, South Africa, Latin America for a fraction of the cost with Cherry Assistant. Be like Mike and grow your business with offshore staff.
So here's the menu, and you can see right there, they've got lead generation, CRM management, prospecting assistance, prospecting assistance. So they're going to help you basically prospect. You got sales presentation preparation, data entry, customer support, project management assistance. We've got the QR code on the screen for my affiliate link. But if you're hearing this later on podcast, just email me, Jessie@reveting.com, and I'll help you get connected to Cherry Assistant. But let's keep this coffee chat going. I've got my mama bug here. Thankfully, both kids are in school. Oh, man, it seems like one's been sick, the other's been sick. I digress. We have another hot topic. Let's hear from our attorney here on lawsuit protection. So we've talked about this a little bit on topic 1. What else do we need to know, Blake?
Well, let's talk about the playing field a little bit here in America. If you want to bring a lawsuit against somebody, first of all, you don't need to have any money. You can bring a case on contingency fee. The majority of the world does not allow contingency fees for attorneys, doctors, CPAs. There's just too much at stake to allow those entrusted with our health, safety, and personal freedom to be influenced by a contingency fee. That's not the United States. United States contingency fees are allowed in all 50 states, and they're pretty much the standard way that law is, that many cases are being brought. Also, attorney advertising is prevalent in the United States. There's not a lot of streets in America that you can drive down real long without seeing some type of sign that says something along the lines of in a wreck and need a check. You can also amend a case in the United States. If you start a lawsuit, later decide that you want to change the reason that you're suing someone after digging through the personal affairs, you can change the reason that you're suing someone. Also, the United States back in the 1980s loosened up greatly on the reasons for bringing a lawsuit. It used to be based only on a law. 1980s, the model rules changed to allow a lawsuit to be brought on the basis that you want to change law, which pretty much opened the floodgates wide open to allow lawsuits to be brought for any reason. What is the result of the breakdown in our legal system where we allow contingency fees and attorney advertising and cases to be amended midway through a lawsuit? The result is we, by some standards, live in the world's most litigious society. There are millions of lawsuits, in excess of 10 million lawsuits filed every single year in the United States. There are billions of dollars ordered to be paid out in judgments every few days. It has almost become a badge of success. If you are successful enough, you can expect to be sued at some point. Now, if you want to put yourself in a better position, what you want to do is have a trust set up and have that trust governed under a jurisdiction that does not have all the problems that we have in the United States. So when you set up a trust in, let's say, the Cook Islands, you're going to, number one, have a plaintiff that cannot bring their case on a contingency fee. So they may have won their case here in the United States on a contingency fee. They then decide to pursue this case in the Cook Islands. They have to initially post a bond, and it's not a cheap bond. It's $100,000. It can be around $100,000 or more in some circumstances. On top of that, they have a much higher standard of proof in the Cook Islands. In the United States, to win a case, you just need a mere preponderance of the evidence, which means 51% to 49% you win. In the Cook Islands, in order to win a case as a plaintiff, you have to meet a standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. This is basically 99.9% chance that the argument you're putting forth is accurate. On top of that, the Cook Islands does not allow you to amend a case. So if you started a lawsuit in the United States and in the Cook Islands and then later realize that you brought the lawsuit for the wrong reason, you have to completely start a new case. And when you restart a new case, there's a good chance that during that time that you were litigating the wrong matter, the statute of limitations expired. There's a very short statute of limitations in the Cook Islands to challenge a trust, 1 to 2 years. So the situation with lawsuits in the United States is they are prevalent. The United States, though, is a great place to do business. It is a place where if you're hardworking, disciplined, focused, willing to take on a little bit of risk, courageous, you can become very wealthy. That is something that I love about America. But it is also a country that is ridden with lawsuits, which is why when it comes to your money and how you're going to protect it, it's good to look beyond the borders of the United States.
So interesting. I don't think many people do that. So this is a good reminder for a lot of people, especially as you're growing your businesses, everyone, is maybe consider looking beyond the United States. Following at Blake Harris Law on TikTok, going through his content, I'm sure there's more you can learn there. But I don't know, what's your take on all of this, John?
I think it makes sense. No one likes lawsuits.
Yeah.
So,
Protect yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I hear you. And I would love to hear from people in the audience. Is this something that you're doing? Have you considered it? Have you seen Blake on TikTok? Just want to know, how is your WinsDay doing? Daytime shows are always a little bit more of a struggle because I know it's 9 a.m. in California right now, but it's lunchtime in the East Coast. So all of you sitting here lurking, eating your Subway sandwiches, let us know what your thoughts are here. But before I transition into the final topic and get it a little more into PR and growing our assets, what's the one final thing you would leave us with about protecting our assets, Blake?
Pre-planning. That's the key to a successful asset protection play. If you set up the trust while the water is calm, you are going to get a very good outcome. If you wait until heat arises, if you wait until you've been sued, there may be something that can be done to mitigate damage. There might not be. It just depends on the type of lawsuit that's being brought. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure, and that is certainly true when it comes to asset protection planning.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's what most good lawyers say about anything is pre-planning. Like, we should have our will in place. We should have all these other things in place. Like, everyone, like, do you have your paperwork in place? So make sure that you're checking on that and protecting your assets. But let's talk a little bit more about growing our assets, John, with PR and marketing. So where they meet in 2025, because, we're not having press conferences like it's 1964 rolling up with our Cadillac.
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk about modern PR.
Yeah. So, this is just one of these like nuanced discussions that most people probably don't care about. But for us professionals in the space, it's kind of like, where does this meet? Where is this going? Who should I hire? And so, this is just one of those topics. I here's my scribblings. I have a nice little Venn diagram down here. And so I'm going to kind of quickly go over what I think PR is, what I think marketing is, and then kind of where they meet. Certainly, most of it's complementary, right? So when you talk about PR, mainly you're talking about media relationships and managing those relationships, making sure things are good when working with journalists and reporters. There's certain codes on the record, off the record, kind of ways to develop that relationship. So media relationships is a huge part of PR. Certainly podcasts have grown and live streams and things like that. So kind of doing all that outreach, and again, managing those operations, press releases, long form writing, and then crisis communications. I was blessed I guess I shouldn't say blessed, but fortunate enough to be in situations where kind of handle crisis communications. And it's not something you want to do. Certain people have firms for it and they make a lot of money, but to go through that process and understand what that looks like and have a strategy and how to plan for a crisis. And that's been a huge experience to me. And I tell people all the time, you don't need someone with crisis communications experience until a crisis happens. And then, to Blake's point, it can get a lot harder. And so understanding that. And then where marketing is the paid ads. I kind of see it as market research, SEO, kind of understanding your ICP or your avatar, your ideal client. And so where they meet, the $1 million question. A lot of those are complementary, but again, it's more in the digital sphere. So copywriting, I think PR people are excellent copywriters. They know how to write. And I think that's a huge ad. Content, brand, KPIs, event marketing. And so I guess the general gist is it's kind of forming into one. And especially, again, for smaller firms and firms that don't have a lot of resource to hire a full-time PR person, marketing, an SEO agency, finding someone that can understand how all these things intersect with each other and, put forth a comprehensive plan and execute against that, I think is critical for a lot of these smaller firms that, want to do a lot of stuff, that want to reach out to reporters, that want to write good content, that want to perhaps run ads, that don't really understand copywriting and the proper hooks on LinkedIn and that nature. So it's definitely molding into one. And I think if you're not leveraging all of them at the same time, you're missing out.
Yeah. And use Quoted. I think I met both of you through Quoted, which is QWOTED.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's like the modern PR dream, you're just able to connect, like a small creator like me has been able to connect with so many people through their PR agents who are trying to get placement on podcasts for their clients and employers. But yeah, it's a new age. And if you're not adjusting, then you're not going to be growing and having any assets to protect.
Yeah.
So clearly, Blake, you got the gist of it. You've built your social media. What about PR for you? Like, have you started? Obviously, you're here. You were unquoted, but what about any traditional press placement or anything like that? Have you gone for any earned media?
I have been quoted in quite a bit of media.
Nice.
Forbes a few times, Market Watch, Denver Post. I've spoken at events internationally and domestically. It's an area that not a lot of attorneys there's not a lot of attorneys who've developed the proper knowledge and skills to do this type of work or do this type of work consistently. And of the attorneys who do it, there's a very small pool who actually focus exclusively on offshore planning. So when the media does need somebody who can comment on the subject, I am somebody who they consult quite frequently, and I'm always happy and honored to do that. But it's very much going to be what's necessary in order to grow a law firm in this age. There was a time when you could just buy a television advertising or a yellow page ad, or even just go to the local whatever networking event and grow based that way. The game has changed a lot, and if you want to grow your business, you got to get out there and you've got to be on the podcast, and you've got to be there in the news, and you've got to be there on social media, and you've got to come at people from all different angles. And that's how you really build trust, where it's, oh, well, I saw Blake's a reel on Instagram years ago, and now another attorney who watched his CLE is recommending him. Well, this has to be the person I need to go to, as opposed to just dropping into Google and seeing Blake Harris Law, but some other people there as well. It's the one who's had touch points over the years that's going to be the one who wins the most business, and PR's part of that.
No longer can we just like fax a press release to someone and they're just going to like copy it and put it in the newspaper for us, right? Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, and I would say like on the press release thing, I think a lot of people tend to overlook that in the sense of they'll use a business wire or a wire service. They'll put it out there and they're like, oh great, we are on Yahoo, we're on all these things, and there's definitely benefits to it, but understanding, where PR comes is understanding, hey, maybe we can offer this to an exclusive to someone. Maybe it's not a Wall Street Journal.
Right.
It is. Maybe it's a tier 2. Maybe it's an industry pub. But having someone that kind of can put their finger on the pulse and saying, hey, I think we can get some earned media coverage out of this, which, to Blake's point, is a lot bigger of a credibility builder than just putting something on the wire. Or, maybe we need to put this on a blog or we repurpose this in some way. So, and the thing is, a lot of these CEOs don't have time to really think about this, right? They're like, hey, just get it out, right? Just get it out. And so we really need to slow down.
As many people as you can. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And they think about it just like the old school, like you said, put it out on the wire. Like it's just something people said. But yeah, it doesn't always make sense to do it that way anymore. And I would love to just nerd out on like relationship building with PR people these days with you. But I know we need to like sort of somewhat wrap up because we still have the guru of the week. And we have to make sure that we hear from both of you about what you're doing and how people can reach out to you if they want to work with you. So really quick, I'm going to pull myself out of the screen here and I'm going to pull up your gurus of the week. So you all just spent the last hour basically inspiring us. So we want to know who inspires you. And of course, you told us beforehand. So lucky enough, we have their picture here. Could you tell us a little bit about why we should go follow your guru?
I think my guru of the week, Justin Wales, is worth a follow. I've been following him for years. We worked together on a few projects many years ago. Justin is a crypto attorney, and in my opinion, one of the best crypto attorneys out there. Crypto is a very niche area of the law, just like offshore trust. And Justin provides good comments on news that's affecting the crypto industry. He is authentic. He's not afraid to call someone out or stir up the pot a little bit, engage in some controversy. He also has a nice sense of humor to him. It's a very different industry than the industry that I'm in, but I very much see him as a model for the type of social media influencer I would like to be. Nice.
Great. Crypto is definitely something we should all learn more about, I think. My guru of the week is Dave Gerhardt. He founded the B2B Exit5 community. Really kind of, I listen to podcasts to learn. And so his podcast has been huge on bringing on a lot of different guests on a lot of different topics. And in a great way, the opening to his podcast is a Biggie song. And the way he uses it in that intro song is genius. I love it. And so hats off to Dave on that front.
And I went to Dave's event in Vermont, so I can echo that. I think he's really cool too. I started listening to him like back when he had the DGMG, I think, or something like that. His podcast was called in like 2019 or during the pandemic. I digress. Would love to hear from you all too. Go follow them because clearly if these guys are suggesting them and they're inspired by them, maybe you'll be inspired by them too. Like change up that algorithm on your LinkedIn and go find some new people to follow. But I digress. I want to hear more from you in the next 5 minutes. Both of you get about 2.5 minutes. So please tell the listeners what you do, who you serve, and how you serve them. And so if they think that you might be able to help them, how could they reach out to you as well? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Blake.
Well, to recap, I'm an offshore asset protection attorney. I help my clients protect their assets from lawsuits and divorce. We focus exclusively on using offshore structures because that gives our clients the best protection. If you would like to learn more about asset protection, I have written a book, Don't Let a Lawsuit Take Away Everything. You can send me an email. I'm happy to send you a PDF copy. Or if you're interested in asset protection, reach out to my law firm. Go to blakeharrislaw.com. We can get you scheduled with a consultation with a member of my firm. If you would like to follow me on social media, as we mentioned, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, it's all the same handle, at Blake Harris Law. I'm actually the most active on Instagram, but I am active on all of the channels, generally posting a few videos a day where I talk about asset protection. I also talk about my travel. I travel quite extensively. Right now, it's about 1 a.m. in Thailand. I'm here for 2 weeks doing some Muay Thai training. Most of my travel is for work, but this one was more of a fun one, if you can call it that. Anyways, if you'd like to learn more about asset protection, reach out to me. All you have to remember is Blake Harris Law. My email is blake@blakeharrislaw.com.
So simple and easy. It's like a marketing dream. I love it. Blake Harris Law. You heard it right there. And same for you, John. We want to hear, like, who do you help? How do you help them? And if they could use your help, how could they reach you?
Yeah. So I am a PR brand and content expert. I help primarily kind of startups and smaller or younger financial firms, think middle market, think VCs. And so, what I found again is a lot of these firms know that there is importance in pressing LinkedIn and getting out there and leveraging all these kind of PR levers of podcasts, content, blogs, things of that nature, but they're just not sure how to do it. They don't have the time or they don't have the resources to really build out that function. And so, I help them in any small business really think through their content strategy, understand kind of what themes or pillars they want to talk about, think about their target audience, what they want to hear from them, and then execute. At the end of the day, executing is so difficult in the sense of there's not a lot of time. And so executing on that strategy, optimizing that, and then growing their digital brand so that, again, they can get some of these opportunities in the larger Forbes or Wall Street Journal. What I always push is you can't jump right to a Wall Street Journal. You have to build your brand. You have to build a reason why people should be interested in you. And that will lead to more opportunities like, international trips and conferences and things of that nature. So the best way to reach out to me is through my website, which is arichopinion.com. My LinkedIn page, I think, is my best way to reach out to me. And then my email address is john@arichopinion.com.
I love that. Thank you both so much for spending your lunch hour with us. And thank you to everyone on the East Coast for spending your lunch hour with us. And everyone on the West Coast, good morning. Happy Wednesday. Go back, watch the recording. We'll be putting this on podcast later on. But really appreciate everyone taking their time to spend their Wednesday with us. But John and Blake, thank you again. Really appreciate having you on. All right. So go ahead.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll close this out with a video here. Bye, everyone.